Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. Let's just jump right into this, shall we? Today, we're embarking on what I like to consider a bit of an academic masterclass, focusing on a truly massive global phenomenon. We're looking at how human movement physically, economically, and culturally shapes our entire planet. If you think about it, we usually view travel purely through the lens of leisure and relaxation. But as an academician, I'm going to invite you to put on a slightly different set of lenses today. We're going to examine the geography of tourism as a rigorous spatial science. Here's a quick look at our syllabus for today's explainer. First, defining tourism geography. Second, classifying tourist motivations. Third, the sustainable travel shift. Fourth, the double-edged sword. And finally, we'll wrap up with applied geography, the incredible India case study.
All right, part one, defining tourism geography, more than just a vacation.
Okay, it's time to shift our perspective from a purely leisure mindset to a strictly scientific one. I want to start by asking you a rather fundamental question. What really is tourism? Think about it. When you book a flight or a train ticket, are you just a traveler going on holiday? Or are you, in fact, an active participant in a highly complex geographical shift? As geographers have noted for decades now, millions of us migrating globally every single year isn't just a vacation, it is a fundamentally geographical occurrence that bridges locations, landscapes, and human identities.
Now, the absolutely crucial point here is how we define this. The geography of tourism is the study of travel and tourism as an industry and a sociocultural practice, deeply concerned with location, space, and environment. Scholars like Leiper actually assert that these three elements, location, space, and environment, are geography's primary concerns. When we travel, we are actively participating in a socioeconomic phenomenon, and it triggers this massive chain reaction of interactions between us as visitors and the new environments we're temporarily inhabiting. And because we have literally millions of people moving across the globe, this whole thing can't just happen randomly, right? It requires intense spatial organization. This brilliantly illustrates how tourism planning operates systematically across four distinct administrative levels. At the international level, you've got organizations like the UNWTO creating global guidelines and policies. Then we move down to the national level, where governments step in to define major tour routes and infrastructure standards. Zooming in a bit further, we hit the regional level, which focuses on internal transport networks and regional access. And finally, the local or community level. This deals with the actual land use for resorts, villages, and the tourist attractions themselves. So literally, every step you take on a trip has been planned across these four tiers.
Moving right along to Section 2, classifying tourist motivations, basically the why of travel. So we've got the spatial planning down, but what actually pulls humans from their familiar, comfortable environments to totally new geographic locations? Well, as an academic discipline, we can classify these motivations into primary tourism categories. We've got nature tourism, cultural tourism, pilgrimage tourism, which is driven by moral or spiritual purposes, and medical tourism, where people cross borders seeking specialized healthcare. What is truly fascinating here is understanding that each of these categories creates an entirely different footprint on the destination.
Let's take a closer look at cultural tourism, as defined by the UNWTO. The visitor's essential motivation here is to learn, discover, and consume both tangible and intangible cultural attractions. When you are a cultural tourist, you're interacting directly with the architecture, the historical monuments, and the spiritual characteristics of a society. You are quite literally consuming a region's history, their literature, their music, and their way of life. Naturally, the geographic impact here is heavily focused on urban centers, heritage sites, and historical monuments.
Now flip the script and contrast that cultural footprint with nature tourism. The human desire here is entirely different. We are seeking immersion in undeveloped natural settings and biological diversity. We're actively moving away from the built environment of cities and stepping into ecosystems to observe diverse species. Think of elephants in their natural habitat, or traversing dense forests and pristine waterfalls. The spatial requirement here is vast, untouched land, and the primary concern shifts dramatically toward environmental preservation. Which brings us to Section 3, the sustainable travel shift, or balancing the ecosystem. With over 1 billion tourist arrivals expected worldwide, we are in desperate need of a massive paradigm shift to keep this global industry from destroying the very resources it relies upon. Imagine a whiteboard moment in one of my university lectures. This specific intersection is the absolute core of modern tourism geography. True sustainable tourism only exists at the exact intersection of these three academic pillars. First up, economic efficiency. The tourism must be viable and actually satisfy demand. Second, social equity. It has to benefit the local society, respecting sociocultural values and genuinely improving the quality of life. And third, preserving the environment. Conserving natural resources for future generations. Listen, if a tourism model leans too heavily on profit and ignores the environment, or focuses only on nature but marginalizes the local community, it just collapses. It's only in that middle intersection where long-term sustainability thrives.
And the most direct practical application of those three pillars? That's ecotourism. It's travel that is financially viable, supports environmental protection, and provides direct socioeconomic benefits to the local community. It's really a small-scale, highly inventive phenomenon designed to bring local people and development agencies together. The ultimate goal here is to offer an authentic experience while minimizing any negative impacts on the region's heritage and biodiversity.
All right, on to Section 4, the double-edged sword, analyzing the impacts. As scientists, we have to look at the complete picture. We are going to adopt a stance of strict, neutral objectivity right now to dissect the real-world consequences of mass human movement. Let's systematically weigh the outcomes. On the positive side, tourism is a massive economic engine. It boosts foreign exchange, it initiates the preservation of cultural heritage that might otherwise just be neglected, and it forces the development of vital infrastructure like roads, airports, and sanitation. However, on the negative side, the sheer carrying capacity of a destination is often completely exceeded. This leads to severe environmental degradation, rampant pollution, and profound cultural disruption. We're essentially looking at a very delicate scale where massive economic benefits are constantly threatening to outweigh heavy ecological and social costs placed on local populations.
And that leads us to what I think is one of the most fascinating and frankly complex sociocultural concepts in our field, the demonstration effect. It is a disruptive social phenomenon where local communities actually alter their lifestyles to imitate the material wealth and behaviors of visiting tourists. Tourists arrive with expensive cameras, specific clothing, totally different social habits. Local populations, especially the youth, observe these behaviors and aspire to imitate them. While this can sometimes encourage open-mindedness, academics typically characterize it as a highly disruptive influence. It creates aspirations for often inaccessible material wealth, and, over time, tourists unknowingly change the core identities and traditional lifestyles of the very places they traveled so far to see.
Let's bring this all home with Section 5, Applied Geography, the Incredible India Case Study.
Let's ground all this theoretical framework we've been discussing and apply it to the incredibly diverse geographic zones of India. India's spatial offerings are quite literally vast. On one hand, you have the Bogota waterfall in Telangana, a prime example of nature tourism, where visitors are seeking out the raw power and beauty of untouched ecosystems. But simultaneously, you have the spectacular floral festival of Bathukama, a deeply rooted example of cultural and spiritual tourism. In a single geographic region, you've got distinct tourism sectors operating side by side, drawing completely different demographics of travelers, and each requiring totally different infrastructure and sustainability planning. And when we zoom out to the national level, India's extreme geographical diversity naturally dictates its entire tourism policy. The country is effectively carved into unique tourism zones. You have the Himalayan region in the north offering adventure, skiing, and trekking among snow-clad peaks. You've got vast desert areas offering unique cultural landscapes, extensive coastal plains drawing leisure travelers, and deeply sacred centers driving immense domestic pilgrimage tourism. Managing all of this requires incredible spatial planning to ensure economic growth doesn't trigger environmental collapse or cultural erosion in these highly sensitive zones.
Wow! We have covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From the rigid academic definitions of spatial planning down to the very real cultural impacts of our travel habits. I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought. Based on this academic lens, understanding that you are participating in a massive, structured geographical shift, what kind of footprint will you leave on the landscape the next time you travel? Will you be a catalyst for the local economy and cultural preservation, or an unknowing contributor to environmental degradation and the demonstration effect? The choice and the geography is entirely in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring responsibly.